Hey friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to Hot Takes. This is where I get your hot takes and then I talk about your hot takes, and we're going to go ahead and dive into it because the draft just happened. So I'm sure you guys have something to say about the draft. Here we go from Tim. He says the draft was dumb. Go back to the superstar shakeup, but only focus on people moving and switching brands. The bulk of the draft was people staying where they are. Not exciting. Hot take from Tim. Oh my goodness. Tim's not into the draft. A lot of people out there had kind of similar sentiments this year. The draft, a little bit on the underwhelming side. Here's the thing. If everybody switches brands, then you're going to have the same matchups. So I kind of feel like, I don't know, they did this to have a fresh set of matchups heading into, let's be honest, the rest of the year. We're like almost halfway into 2024. We're going to need fresh matchups heading into like the Royal Rumble, basically. And given that, you know, a lot of these pay-per-views, I mean, they probably are already planning out all the various big-time matchups anyways, and they're probably just setting up all the stories to come over the next 6 to 9 months. Nice. Let's take a look really quick. Let's do this, for example, okay? The Intercontinental Championship. Sami Zayn currently holds it. There's unfinished business between him and Chad Gable. There's fresh match. There's kind of unfinished business between him and Bronson Reed. It seems like they're going to be doing some sort of triple threat coming up with those two guys. I don't know, probably not at Backlash, but whatever's after Backlash. What is after Backlash? Money in the Bank? Is that the one? I don't know. You got Braun Breaker, who's probably going to be at the very least in the mid-card title scene. So he's on Raw. Gunther's still there. You've got Drew McIntyre. Well, that's more like the world title scene. You got Ilya Dragunov, who also can be competing for the Intercontinental Championship now. You got Braun Strowman there now, so that's new also. And then, like, I guess Sheamus stays. Sheamus has never won the Intercontinental Championship before. So there right there is like 5 different people, various matchups for Sami Zayn in the Intercontinental Championship that they can have play out over pay-per-views for the next, 7 to 9 months. And on top of that, you got the world title there with Damian Priest. That'll probably end up going to Drew McIntyre. And then you got a bunch of matchups there. Obviously, CM Punk is the big feud right now. Braun Strowman came to Raw, so he'll probably be in the world title scene. Gunther will probably be in the world title scene. At a certain point, Sheamus, who is also in the Intercontinental Championship scene, can also be in the world title scene as well. Ivar also, he could be in the Intercontinental Championship scene. The Final Testament moved to Raw, so you can get Karrion Kross in the world title or the Intercontinental Championship scene. On top of that, a couple of tag teams as well for the women's division. Right now, obviously, with Rhea on the shelf, you've got Damage Control moving over there, who has like legitimately 4 different options. 3 options? How many options? No, yeah, 4 options. Dakota Kai, the Kabuki Warriors, and Io Sky. So you've got a bunch of options there. Lyra Valkyria for the women's title as well. Liv Morgan's already there. She's staying there. Kiana James is new there. Zoe Stark and Shayna Baszler, they're always potentially gonna be in that one. So I kind of just feel like they made certain changes to get fresh matchups to last until, probably like the Royal Rumble, the end of the year, basically. And then over on SmackDown, you keep AJ over there because he's going to be feuding with Cody for a while. Randy stays there because he hasn't had like a world title feud over there yet. LA Knight, you got the Bloodline still over there. Andrade, he's probably going to be challenging for that U.S. title. Shinsuke changed brands, I guess because SmackDown needs a guy to eat pins. Legado is over there now, so there's a bunch of fresh matchups there. Baron Corbin's coming to SmackDown. So I don't necessarily think that it was necessary for them to just do this wholesale changing of brands. That being said, and because also there was like a couple of really big high-profile NXT moves. Carmelo Hayes, I've already mentioned Ilya Dragunov, and then of course there's who else? The Lyra, I already mentioned her, and then Braun Breaker, Baron Corbin, and Dijak. So like it seems like they're probably, unlike with Vince McMahon, plotting out the next 6 to 9 months in advance of, like the end of the year. Like heading into the summer, you get your SummerSlam matchup, probably being Roman back for that. Maybe The Rock comes back for SummerSlam, so you got your main event right there. The world title scene has got like 5 different people who could be competing for that thing. Intercontinental scene right now, the Raw show is stacked with like the wrestlers, right? Like people who can put on like a 12 to 25 minute match and just absolutely kill it. Seth Rollins, when he gets back, he's going to be involved in that as well. So I don't know, man. I kind of feel like both shows are loaded. There are a number of feuds that like you're not going to split apart Drew McIntyre and CM Punk on different brands right now. You're not going to do that kind of stuff. So I don't know. The problem is this. Number one, people had a misconception that NXT was going to be drafting people down to their brand. And when I say down, I mean down. Because to me, on screen, it was kind of set up for Pierce and Aldis when they were like, it was like the week before spring break, and I think they had that little powwow. Aldis was on Zoom. Pierce was there talking to Ava, and she was like, "Hey, I'm basically, this brand is getting ready to be pick clean. We set up a bunch of great superstars for you guys." And Pierce and Aldis were just sort of champing at the bit to get their hands on NXT superstars, to like draft the NXT wrestlers. So it was never really spelled out on TV that, oh, NXT, we're going to be in the draft, drafting people to our brand. That's not what they're there for. They are there to feed main roster. That's why there are so many people in NXT, because then you got to start building those people up. So the Obafemis are going to end up in the world title scene. Not Dijak, obviously, because he's gone. But you guys know what I mean. NXT is its own thing. It's developmental. It is to prepare people for main roster. And this year's draft kind of made that clear, even though they kind of like, they insinuated that there would be more NXT involvement. Instead, it was just NXT. But even in NXT, they didn't get picked clean necessarily. Ilya had done everything. Ilya should have been on main roster a year ago. Blair Davenport probably should have been on main roster straight from, Japan. So, yeah. Bobby Lashley, he's still on SmackDown. I mean, there was no reason to move him. There's still like a lot of stuff that he can do on SmackDown. I'll be honest, they have not done a whole lot with the Pride. They were in a thing with Karrion Kross for a while. Now, I don't know, what are they messing around with Waller in Theory? I don't even know. Bobby's not even feuding with anybody right now. They need to get on that. I'm not saying it's perfect. One thing that irritated me about the draft, too, was Triple H basically, and WWE, Michael Cole and all them, basically saying it's just as important for Raw and SmackDown to keep certain people as it is for them to draft people away from other brands. Which, yes, is true, but it's also super underwhelming for people just not to move brands at all. Also, having the champions be keepers, in theory, that's a good idea. In practice, kind of boring, because it's like, okay, well, Cody's off the board, Bayley's off the board, Becky's off the board, and Damian Priest is off the board. And so the Judgment Day is going to go where Damian Priest is. So, I don't know. The draft this year, not exciting, but I kind of feel like it was just sort of used by creative to sort of put the pieces in place to do what they want to do with them going forward. As opposed to how it used to be with Vince, where it just seemed like he was like, God damn it, pal, I'm going to shock people by moving pieces and then we'll figure it out later. That was his entire thing, is just do this now and then figure it out later. All right, I like this one. Thor says Drew McIntyre has contributed the most to the prestige of the World Heavyweight Championship. The worth of titles is determined by its challengers. I really like this take because I kind of agree with it, as long as you're not lumping Seth Rollins in there with it. For the longest time, this title did feel like the secondary title. I kind of feel like now with Damian Priest with that title, it kind of feels like the secondary title again. Although I kind of feel like Drew is going to get that title at Clash of the Castle, and then him and Punk will be feuding over that title, and I think that'll be all sorts of awesome. And then you can rebuild Damian Priest back up out of the ashes of Judgment Day, because clearly that's going to fall apart. But Drew McIntyre's involvement as a challenger for the title has been probably the best thing to happen to that title, barring Seth Rollins holding the title, because I think that Seth is obviously an integral part of that. But in terms of his challengers, yes, I agree with this. Absolutely. Drew McIntyre as a challenger has done just as much for that title, probably a lot more than any of the other challengers for that title. And it's kind of a shame that they waited this long to have somebody that legitimate pose that much of a threat to that world title. The Dawn says Carmelo Hayes' one match with Cody Rhodes has already done a better job at establishing him than Bron Breakker's 9 squash matches have combined. I don't think a lot of people would disagree with this take. It's kind of a cold take, but it's one that I firmly agree with. So the Dawn, I'll say, yeah, I agree. I don't know what those squash matches for Bron Breakker are supposed to prove. His promo backstage on Raw on Monday was very whispery. They need to get the guy a character. Carmelo Hayes comes in already established. And it's not even like a gimmick. It's just he is so, like, everybody just understands immediately when he talks who he is. Bron Breakker, it's like, who are you supposed to be? You run ropes really fast. You look like a Steiner because you're clearly a Steiner. Where is the personality that we kind of saw in NXT? I just don't see it now. Isaiah TV says we need a Going in Raw reunion episode with Dan. It'd be great to see you, him, and Ann Larson together, especially with how much has changed in wrestling since the last reunion. Dan has an open invitation to be on the show anytime he wants. All he has to do is ask. And in fact, Dan, coincidentally, in the same thread, left a hot take here. His is super hot. Says Danhausen needs, sorry, I'll do this in Dan's voice. Danhausen needs a Roman-style run as AEW champ. 6+ years minimum. I'm serious about this. That's my best Dan Nerd Cubed impression. So a lot of people might not know. Back when Larson and I started Going in Raw, if you don't know, I got a wrestling podcast also. It's over at the Going in Raw channel. It's youtube.com/Steven Larson. And it started with 3 people, me, Larson, and a British fella named Dan. And yeah, he actually named the show. Going in Raw was his name, which I'll be honest with you, in the end, really, it's not a great name because, I mean, it's a sexual euphemism. It's an innuendo, but yeah. And then eventually Larson and I were like, hey, we want to do this a lot more than monthly. And he was like, I don't want to. And then he gave us his blessing. So it was all great. And we're still very good friends. This is a terrible take though. Awful take. Danhausen, AEW champion for 6 years. Terrible take. I don't know why. I think 5 people just thumbs up this because they love Dan. Oh boy, here we go. Neely Bobber says, I believe TK, that's Tony Khan, is fueling a lot of this tribalism for wrestling more than WWE is. Honestly, I just want to enjoy it without having one person or the other criticizing what I watch. So it's kind of interesting. And I had actually already recorded this episode of Hot Takes, and then I decided to redo it because I go into a bit of Tony Khan's, again, it's kind of old news by now, Tony Khan referring to WWE as the Harvey Weinstein of professional wrestling. How he built up a lot of goodwill doing the whole neck brace, selling the gimmick, selling the angle from the Young Bucks, giving him a Tony Khan driver. And he was selling that. And then and everybody thought it was really cool. And then he goes on NFL Network. And, you know, he said WWE is the Harvey Weinstein of professional wrestling. And to me, it was honestly, I don't know. Look, I understand that WWE has that nasty lawsuit that they have to deal with, and they have to come to terms with, and they have to take responsibility for the actions of Vince McMahon and the actions of the people that Vince McMahon brought along with him and that were involved in that whole situation. And WWE needs to, they need to make good on that. They need to clean up their house. They have been running a sloppy shop. I get all that. My point of view with that is, I don't think that it was terribly like a super smart move for Tony Khan to in a way make light of the victims of that by taking what amounts to a cheap shot at WWE. And number 2, you had positive goodwill. People were into what you were doing. And then you change the conversation into another flame war, if you will, another tribalism war by taking a shot at WWE, making the people on NFL Network pretty uncomfortable too, by the way. So, yeah, I kind of feel like the dude just can't get out of his own way sometimes. Anecdotally speaking, I've seen plenty of people who have said, I can't get into AEW because the promoter is so irritating. Paraphrasing there. And I get it. Like, I understand that, you know, like, I wish that he would sort of take more of a Scott D'Amore approach back when Scott was with TNA and just sort of keep it, professional. No need to take shots at anybody. Understanding totally that WWE takes shots. If you rise above all that, right? If you stand above that, then you're going to engender a lot more goodwill than if you take shots back at the competition. That's my personal opinion. You guys are free to disagree, but I kind of agree. I think that he's sort of one of the people that fuels the tribalism. Shayer Mo Hun says the only way to solidify Solo as a star would be for Roman to make the big comeback with the Usos, only to lose with Solo pinning Roman. Solo's got to put in a lot more work. They got to do a lot more with the Bloodline for that to happen. When Roman makes his big return, he ain't losing to anybody. You can make the new Bloodline a big, big, big deal by having them kind of take over. If they add members, Jacob Fatu obviously being one of them. Hell, even Nia Jax, given that the Bloodline is staying over on SmackDown. Nia Jax is heading over there. Maybe she can join the Bloodline. Throw your ones up. But no, when Roman comes back, he's totally going to beat Solo. They'll probably have a match. They'll probably build Solo to that degree. They'll probably have a match, but Roman's totally going to win. Alyssa says Solo Sikoa is almost literally just a thumb. Tama Tonga already has more of a presence to him than Solo does. He's not even Wish Roman Reigns. Send him back to NXT and hand it off to Tama, or this Bloodline story is dead in the water. All right, so that's pretty harsh, Alyssa. But I will say this. Up until that promo he did when he introduced Tama Tonga, up until that, when he didn't introduce him, when he came out, he did the promo and everybody's booing him and stuff. I thought that was like Solo's best promo. The problem is the dude's been like winless since the John Cena match. And that's not very intimidating. Tama Tonga has tons of presence, and Jacob Fatu, if they bring him into the Bloodline, which might happen this weekend at the show, the France show, Backlash. I think that they're going to get him there. I think that they're going to get him there. And I think as long as he keeps cutting good promos and he shows that he can be a ruthless leader of the Bloodline, if he can actually find a way to be scary, which, yes, they have to put work into, but I feel like based off that first promo and what we've seen so far, I've liked it, but they need to have him win some matches. I thoroughly think that him and Tama Tonga are going to beat Kevin Owens and Randy Orton coming up at Backlash France. But yeah, they're really going to need to put a lot of work in to build him up so that when Roman does come back, he actually has a formidable opponent and not just, as you say here, literally just a thumb. Guardian Abe with a real hot take here says Cody should lose to AJ at Backlash. I'm not even going to go ahead and read the rest because this is a huge no. This dude has been building this story for 3 years. He ain't going to lose to AJ Styles at Backlash. Come on now. Come on. Let's not be silly here. What does he say? We shouldn't go from one super long title reign to the next. It's been like what? What was it? April. It's been less than a month. Less than a month. What was it? April 6th and 7th? Is that what it was? It will be less than a month at Backlash. Can you give the guy like 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months? Maybe. We don't need 1,000 days. We don't need 1,200 days. But give the guy more than 30. Reagan here says Drew's current theme is better than Broken Dreams. So this is a hot take because everybody is asking for Broken Dreams to come back. Although there are 5 thumbs up here and good for you people. I like Broken Dreams. I think it's fine. I don't think it's so significantly better than Drew's theme now is to really make me give too much of a shit. Somebody else in here just absolutely savages Broken Dreams. Says like the intro is boring. It doesn't kick in for a while. And I kind of agree with that stuff too. I think I'll put it this way. It was more important to bring back Sheamus's lobster head theme than it was for Drew to get Broken Dreams back. You guys can discuss that in the comments. That's going to do it for Hot Takes. Thanks everybody for chiming in. I appreciate it. Hit that subscribe